Archangel Michael says, "Chosen one, what you are building needs quiet, not audience." Jesus says, "Some things grow only in secret, and the moment they are exposed too soon, they stop growing entirely." Stay with this message. Something in your life has been quietly developing, something you have felt tempted to announce, to explain, to share with people who have not actually earned the right to witness it yet. This message exists to help you understand why holding it close, for now, is not weakness or secrecy born of shame, but genuine wisdom. Breathe slowly. Let your shoulders soften. Whatever has filled your attention recently, set it aside for these next several minutes, because what follows deserves genuine presence rather than passing, distracted attention. Consider what specifically has been quietly developing in your own life recently. Perhaps a financial improvement you have been working toward carefully, still fragile, still building momentum. Perhaps a personal transformation, a new discipline, a new way of relating to yourself and others, still tender, still finding its footing. Perhaps a specific plan or opportunity you have been developing privately, not yet ready for outside opinion, outside doubt, or outside expectation. Give yourself genuine time with this reflection rather than rushing toward whatever answer first comes to mind. Sometimes more than one area of quiet development exists simultaneously, and identifying which one carries the most genuine weight right now can help you focus this particular reflection more effectively than attempting to address everything at once. Whatever specifically arose as you considered these possibilities, hold it clearly in mind as you continue through this reflection, because this message is speaking directly to exactly that. Here is something worth understanding about why certain things genuinely require quiet during their early, formative stages. A seed planted too shallow, exposed too early to light and air before its roots have had time to establish themselves, rarely survives to become anything at all. The same principle applies to significant personal growth, significant financial progress, significant change of any kind. What is still forming needs protection, not premature exposure, in order to actually take hold and stabilize. Consider what specific roots your own particular development still needs time to establish, whether genuine confidence not yet fully settled, genuine skill not yet fully developed, or simply genuine clarity about direction not yet fully formed. Naming these specific, still developing roots can help you understand exactly why continued protection matters right now, rather than treating this discretion as vague, generalized caution disconnected from your own particular, actual circumstances. This is not about permanent secrecy. It is about appropriate timing. Think about a specific example from nature that illustrates this same principle clearly. A butterfly emerging from its chrysalis requires that entire process to unfold undisturbed, in privacy, away from interference, in order to develop the genuine strength needed for its wings to eventually function properly once it finally emerges. Interrupting that process prematurely, however well-intentioned the interruption might be, typically produces a butterfly unable to fly at all. Your own quiet building deserves this same undisturbed space to complete its necessary formation. Reflect honestly on why you might feel tempted to share this particular thing prematurely, before it has genuinely had time to stabilize. Sometimes it is genuine excitement, wanting others to celebrate alongside you. Sometimes it is a need for validation, wanting external confirmation that this particular thing genuinely matters or is genuinely real. Sometimes it is simply habit, the modern reflex to narrate everything happening in your life immediately, publicly, before it has even had time to fully settle within your own private understanding. Whichever of these applies most accurately to your own particular temptation, understanding it honestly can help you make a more deliberate choice about timing, rather than acting purely from that immediate impulse. Try naming, as specifically as you genuinely can, which of these particular motivations feels most accurate regarding your own current temptation toward premature sharing. This kind of honest, specific naming tends to reduce the impulsive pull of that temptation considerably more effectively than simply trying to suppress it without genuine understanding of what actually underlies it. Here is something worth understanding about the specific cost of premature exposure, since sharing something too early carries genuine risk beyond simply losing an element of surprise. Other people's doubt, even well-intentioned doubt, can quietly plant seeds of uncertainty within your own mind, seeds that would not have taken root had that doubt never been introduced during this particularly vulnerable, formative stage. Other people's expectations, once voiced, can subtly begin shaping decisions that should genuinely remain entirely yours to make, based on your own evolving understanding rather than external pressure to meet a timeline or outcome someone else has now attached themselves to. Consider whether either of these risks feels particularly relevant to whatever specific thing you have been building quietly, since recognizing the genuine, practical cost of premature exposure can strengthen your resolve to continue protecting it during this particular stage. Think about a specific past instance, either in your own life or observed in someone else's, when sharing something too early genuinely produced one of these particular costs, either doubt that took root unnecessarily, or expectation that later felt genuinely constraining. This kind of concrete, remembered example often reinforces the abstract principle far more effectively than the principle alone, offering genuine, personal evidence for why this particular caution matters. Here is something worth understanding about the specific difference between genuine privacy and genuine isolation, since this message is not suggesting you carry everything entirely alone, without any support whatsoever. Privacy means being deliberate and selective about who receives access to something still forming, choosing carefully based on genuine trustworthiness and genuine capacity to support rather than undermine, rather than sharing indiscriminately with anyone who happens to ask or anyone you happen to encounter in casual conversation. This distinction matters considerably, since complete isolation, carrying everything entirely alone without any genuine support whatsoever, is not actually what this message is encouraging. Genuine privacy allows for carefully chosen, appropriate connection, while still maintaining the discretion this reflection has been describing throughout its content. Consider who, if anyone, has genuinely earned a place within this particular circle of trust regarding whatever you are currently building. This person, if they exist, should demonstrate a track record of celebrating your genuine progress without envy, offering honest but constructive feedback rather than reflexive doubt, and respecting confidentiality when confidentiality has been explicitly requested. If such a person exists, consider whether sharing selectively, with appropriate boundaries clearly communicated, might offer valuable support without exposing this particular development to the broader risks already discussed throughout this reflection. Consider, too, how you might communicate these particular boundaries clearly to this trusted person, whether asking them explicitly to hold what you share in confidence, or asking them to offer support without necessarily offering unsolicited opinions about timing or direction. Clear, explicit communication of these particular boundaries tends to produce far better results than assuming the other person will simply intuit exactly what kind of support you actually need during this particular season. Here is something worth understanding about the specific role that envy sometimes plays in premature exposure, a difficult subject worth naming directly rather than avoiding out of discomfort. Not everyone in your life, even people who genuinely love you, will necessarily celebrate your progress the way you might hope or expect. Sometimes progress in one person's life inadvertently highlights stagnation or disappointment within someone else's life, producing reactions that, while understandable given human nature, can nonetheless prove genuinely discouraging or even actively undermining during a particularly vulnerable, formative stage of your own development. This does not mean assuming malice from everyone around you. It simply means exercising reasonable discernment about who genuinely has the emotional capacity, in this particular season of their own life, to receive news of your progress with genuine, uncomplicated support. Consider, too, that this dynamic often has nothing to do with how much someone genuinely loves you. Even deeply loving relationships can struggle temporarily with comparison or unprocessed disappointment, particularly if that person is currently navigating their own significant difficulty or stagnation. Recognizing this does not require judging them harshly. It simply requires protecting your own vulnerable, developing progress accordingly, for now. Consider honestly whether specific people in your life might struggle with this particular kind of reaction, not necessarily out of genuine ill will, but simply out of their own unprocessed disappointment or comparison. Protecting your own progress from this particular dynamic, at least temporarily, reflects wisdom rather than unkindness toward them. This does not require permanently excluding these particular people from your life, nor does it require assuming the worst about their genuine character. It simply means recognizing, honestly, that this particular season of your own quiet building may not be the right moment for full transparency with everyone, reserving that fuller transparency instead for whenever both the timing and the specific relationship feel genuinely capable of holding it well. Here is something worth understanding about the specific relationship between quiet discipline and eventual, sustainable success, since the most sustainable achievements typically develop through this exact pattern: quiet, consistent effort maintained over an extended period, largely unwitnessed by anyone except the person actually doing the work, before eventually becoming visible through its accumulated results rather than through premature announcement of intentions or early-stage progress. Consider what it would mean to trust this particular pattern, continuing your quiet, consistent effort without needing external witness or validation in order to sustain your own genuine motivation and commitment. Think about a specific person you genuinely admire, whether known personally or known through their public reputation, whose success clearly reflects this same pattern of sustained, quiet effort preceding eventual, visible achievement. Consider what their particular journey suggests about the genuine value of this kind of patient, protected development, offered as reassurance rather than pressure as you continue your own particular process. Here is something Jesus specifically wants you to understand about this particular season, arriving here in the middle of this reflection, something that was not originally planned when this message began but that insists on being spoken now. He says this: "The quiet you have been maintaining is not emptiness. It is fullness that has not yet finished forming, and rushing to display it prematurely would interrupt exactly the process currently making it genuinely whole." Sit with that for a moment before continuing. Consider what it means that this particular insight arrived unplanned, interrupting the natural flow of this reflection, refusing to wait until a more convenient point later in the message. Sometimes the most significant truths arrive exactly this way, unscheduled, insistent, precisely because they carry a weight that cannot wait for a more orderly, planned moment of delivery. This particular insight matters considerably, since quiet is sometimes mistaken, even by the person experiencing it, as absence or lack, when it may actually represent the opposite, active, ongoing formation happening precisely because it has been protected from premature exposure and premature interruption. Consider what specific evidence might already exist, even now, that this particular quiet is genuinely active and productive, rather than simply empty stagnation. Small internal shifts. Growing clarity about direction. Quiet, incremental progress that has not yet accumulated into something dramatic or visible, but that nonetheless represents genuine, real movement forward. Here is something worth understanding about the specific fear that often underlies the temptation toward premature sharing, fear that if you do not announce this particular development now, it might somehow not be real, or might disappear before you have had the chance to make it known. This fear deserves gentle examination rather than automatic obedience. Notice how this particular fear operates, often quietly, beneath conscious awareness, driving an urge to share that feels more like anxious compulsion than genuine, deliberate choice. Recognizing this fear clearly, rather than simply acting from it unconsciously, allows you to make a more genuinely free choice about whether and when sharing actually serves your best interests. Consider whether this fear genuinely reflects your actual, current circumstances, or whether it reflects an old, perhaps inherited belief that things only become genuinely real once witnessed and validated by others. If the latter applies to your own particular situation, this belief itself deserves examination, since genuine reality does not actually require external witness in order to exist authentically and completely. Think about specific things you already know to be genuinely true about your own life, things that require no external validation whatsoever in order to feel completely, authentically real to you. Your own private thoughts. Your own private convictions. Your own private growth, noticed and felt entirely within your own awareness, regardless of whether anyone else has ever confirmed or acknowledged it. Whatever you are currently building deserves this same quality of internal, self-evident reality, independent of external witness. Here is something worth understanding about the specific role that patience plays throughout this particular season, patience distinct from passive waiting that involves no genuine, ongoing effort or engagement. Genuine patience continues doing the necessary, quiet work, day after day, while simultaneously releasing the pressure of needing immediate external recognition or validation for that work. Consider what specific daily practice might help you sustain this particular patience, something that reinforces your own private commitment to whatever you are building, independent of whether or when it eventually becomes appropriate to share more openly with others. Perhaps a brief, private moment each day, simply acknowledging to yourself that genuine progress continues occurring, even when that progress remains invisible to anyone else. Perhaps a specific, private ritual marking each small milestone, celebrated quietly, entirely for your own benefit rather than requiring external audience or acknowledgement. Here is something worth understanding about eventual timing, since this message is not suggesting permanent, indefinite silence regarding whatever you are currently building. There will likely come a point when sharing more openly becomes genuinely appropriate, once whatever is currently forming has stabilized sufficiently to withstand outside opinion, outside doubt, and outside expectation without losing its own genuine integrity and direction. This distinction matters considerably, since some people, once they discover the genuine value of discretion during formative stages, mistakenly extend that same discretion indefinitely, never quite reaching the point of appropriate, eventual sharing even once genuine readiness has clearly arrived. This particular message is not encouraging that extreme. It is simply encouraging appropriate timing, neither premature nor indefinitely delayed. Consider what specific signs might indicate that this particular timing has genuinely arrived, evidence that whatever you are building has developed sufficient internal stability and momentum that external exposure would no longer pose the same genuine risk it currently does during this particular, more vulnerable, formative stage. These signs might include a settled, confident sense of direction that no longer feels easily shaken by hypothetical outside doubt. Concrete, tangible results that speak for themselves, requiring less explanation or justification than earlier stages might have required. Simply a genuine, internal readiness that feels distinctly different from the earlier temptation toward premature sharing already discussed throughout this reflection, less driven by anxious need for validation and more grounded in genuine, calm confidence. Here is something further Archangel Michael wants to add, arriving again, unplanned, insistent, refusing to remain unmentioned even as this reflection continues toward its eventual close. He says this specifically. There is a particular person in your life who has already sensed, at least partially, what you have been quietly building, even though you have not directly told them. That person's reaction, whatever it eventually turns out to be, does not determine whether what you are building is genuinely real or genuinely worthwhile. Consider what it means that this second, unplanned addition arrived so soon after the first, as though this reflection itself has been building towards something that could no longer remain fully contained within its original, planned structure. Trust that both of these particular additions carry genuine significance, worth holding alongside everything else this message has already offered. Notice who came to mind as you read that. Let that awareness settle, without requiring you to act on it immediately. Consider, briefly, what genuine care might look like regarding that particular person and their partial awareness, whether continuing to allow them their own private observation without needing to confirm or deny it, or eventually, when the timing genuinely feels right, offering them clearer information directly, on your own terms and in your own time, rather than allowing speculation to continue indefinitely in either direction. Here is something worth understanding about self-trust throughout this entire process, since maintaining appropriate discretion regarding your own private progress ultimately requires trusting your own judgment about timing, rather than defaulting automatically to whatever feels most immediately comfortable or socially expected in any given moment. Reflect honestly on whether you generally trust your own judgment regarding matters like this, or whether you have historically deferred too readily to external opinion, even in situations where your own private instinct genuinely knew better. If the latter applies to your own particular pattern, this message is inviting you to practice trusting your own instinct more consistently, beginning specifically with whatever you are currently, quietly building. Think about a specific past instance when you overrode your genuine instinct in favor of external opinion, and consider, honestly, whether that particular override ultimately served you well or poorly. This kind of honest, retrospective examination can help clarify whether your own instinct genuinely deserves greater trust moving forward, particularly regarding this current, private season of quiet development. Here is something worth understanding about the specific relationship between quiet building and genuine faith, for those whose particular worldview includes this kind of spiritual framework. Faith often requires exactly this kind of quiet, private commitment, continuing to believe and continuing to act in accordance with that belief, even before external circumstances have provided visible confirmation that the belief was genuinely well-founded. Consider what specific spiritual practice, if any, genuinely resonates with your own particular worldview, and how that practice might specifically support your continued patience and discretion throughout this particular season. Prayer offered privately. Meditation practiced consistently. Simple, quiet reflection connected to whatever framework genuinely feels meaningful to you personally. Each of these can offer valuable, grounding support precisely during seasons that require this kind of sustained, quiet faith. Consider what it would mean to hold both quiet, private commitment and genuine faith simultaneously throughout this particular season, trusting that the eventual outcome will justify the current discretion, even without requiring immediate, complete certainty about exactly how or when that eventual outcome will fully materialize. Here is something worth understanding about doubt, since doubt likely has arisen at some point during this reflection, questioning whether this message's central invitation genuinely applies to your own specific situation. Consider whether your own doubt reflects genuine, careful evaluation, or whether it reflects something else, perhaps discomfort with the genuine discipline this kind of sustained discretion actually requires, manifesting specifically as skepticism toward the message itself rather than genuine, honest engagement with whatever you are actually building. Consider, too, whether this doubt arrived quickly, almost automatically, at precisely the moment something genuinely significant began surfacing during this particular reflection. This kind of rapid, automatic dismissal often signals precisely the opposite of what it claims, suggesting genuine relevance rather than genuine irrelevance. Here is something worth understanding about what genuinely changes once you commit fully to this particular season of quiet, protected building, benefits extending beyond simply protecting whatever specific project or development this reflection has been addressing throughout its content. Many people report a deepened sense of genuine, internal security once they stop depending on external validation in order to feel confident about their own progress, a security that continues serving them well long after this particular season of quiet building has eventually concluded. Consider what this particular kind of internal security might genuinely mean for you personally, imagining, as specifically as you genuinely can, what it might feel like to trust your own progress fully, independent of whether anyone else currently knows about it or has yet had opportunity to offer their opinion regarding it. Picture yourself, 1 year from now, having completed this particular season of quiet building, looking back at this specific period of discretion and patience. Notice what genuine gratitude might exist for having protected this particular development during its most vulnerable, formative stage, allowing it to grow into something genuinely strong and sustainable before eventually becoming visible to others. Here is a final significant consideration before this message moves toward its close. What you are building needs quiet, not because it is fragile in a permanently weak sense, but because it is still forming, still developing the genuine strength that will eventually allow it to withstand whatever exposure and scrutiny eventually comes its way, once that particular timing has genuinely, appropriately arrived. Release whatever shame or self-doubt might have accumulated regarding your own instinct toward privacy during this particular season. That instinct reflects wisdom, not weakness, not secrecy born of shame, but genuine, appropriate discernment regarding timing and readiness. Before this message reaches its true close, take one final, quiet moment for yourself. Name, specifically, what you have been quietly building. Consider, honestly, whether the temptation toward premature sharing has been present, and whether continuing to protect this particular development, at least for now, genuinely serves its continued growth and eventual, sustainable success. This does not need to feel dramatic. It simply needs to feel true. Trust that this message reached you today for a genuine reason, connecting specifically to something real currently developing within your own actual life, rather than arriving randomly or without genuine relevance to your particular circumstances. Something in you recognized enough significance to continue reading this far, past the point where you might have dismissed this message entirely had it genuinely carried no connection to anything real currently present within your own quiet, private process. Consider, too, what it might mean to continue protecting this particular season of quiet building beyond today, developing a consistent, ongoing practice of discernment regarding what deserves sharing, with whom, and when, rather than allowing the modern reflex toward immediate, public disclosure to override your own better, more deliberate judgment. Reflect, as well, on how you will handle moments of renewed temptation toward premature sharing that are likely to arise as this particular season continues, moments when excitement, uncertainty, or simple habit tempts you to announce something before it has genuinely finished forming. These moments do not indicate that your original commitment to discretion was mistaken. They simply reflect how genuinely difficult sustained discipline of this kind actually is, particularly within a broader culture that often rewards immediate, public disclosure over patient, private development. When these particular moments arise, consider returning to this specific reflection, rereading whatever sections felt most significant during this initial encounter, allowing the content to reinforce your continued commitment to appropriate, deliberate timing. Consider what specific record you might keep as you continue this particular season, brief, private notes tracking whatever progress occurs, evidence you alone can review, sustaining your own internal confidence without requiring external witness or validation in order to feel genuinely real and significant. Think about what genuine readiness for eventual sharing will actually look like, once it genuinely arrives, recognizing that this particular readiness typically develops gradually, becoming clear only once whatever you are building has genuinely stabilized sufficiently to withstand outside exposure without losing its own genuine integrity and direction. Consider, finally, what it would mean to trust this entire process, even without complete certainty about exactly when the appropriate moment for eventual, broader sharing will genuinely arrive. Trust here does not mean passive waiting without any genuine, ongoing effort. It means continued, engaged commitment to whatever quiet building currently requires, while also releasing the exhausting need for complete certainty about precisely when this particular season will eventually give way to something more openly visible and shared. There is one more layer worth adding before this message truly comes to its close, something practical that helps ensure this genuine commitment to appropriate discretion actually holds firm over the coming weeks and months, rather than gradually eroding under the ordinary pressures of daily social life and habitual disclosure. Consider what specific boundaries might genuinely support this particular season of quiet building, boundaries around specific conversations, specific platforms, or specific relationships where the temptation toward premature sharing tends to feel strongest. Naming these specific pressure points in advance can help you prepare a genuine, thoughtful response, rather than being caught off guard in the moment and defaulting to disclosure simply because a direct question was asked or an opportunity for sharing presented itself unexpectedly. Reflect on what specific response you might offer when someone asks directly about whatever you are currently building, a response that honors your own commitment to discretion without requiring outright dishonesty or unnecessary evasiveness. Something simple, genuine, and boundaried, such as acknowledging that something is developing without offering full details, tends to work considerably better than either full disclosure or complete denial, both of which carry their own particular difficulties. Consider, too, what specific role journaling or private reflection might play throughout this particular season, offering an outlet for the genuine excitement, uncertainty, or pride connected to whatever you are building, without requiring that outlet to be external, social, or public. This kind of private processing can genuinely satisfy much of the underlying impulse toward sharing, while still maintaining the appropriate discretion this message has been encouraging throughout its content. Explore what specific evidence of genuine progress you might track privately, evidence that helps sustain your own internal confidence and motivation without requiring external witness. This might include specific milestones reached, specific skills developed, or simply specific moments of clarity and growth that occurred along the way, each one representing real, meaningful progress regardless of whether anyone else currently knows about it. Consider what specific role patience with yourself plays throughout this entire process, recognizing that maintaining this kind of sustained discretion is genuinely difficult, particularly within a culture that often celebrates and rewards immediate, public disclosure. If you notice yourself slipping occasionally, sharing more than you had originally intended, meet that slip with self-compassion rather than harsh self-criticism, simply returning to your original commitment as consistently as you genuinely can moving forward. Reflect, too, on what specific support might genuinely help you maintain this particular commitment, whether a single trusted person who already knows and genuinely respects your need for discretion, or simply your own consistent, private practice of returning to this reflection whenever the temptation toward premature sharing feels particularly strong. Consider what it would mean to view this entire season, not as a burden requiring constant, exhausting vigilance, but as a genuine gift you are offering to whatever you are building, protection that allows it the necessary space and time to develop into something genuinely strong, sustainable, and ready for whatever eventual exposure and sharing eventually becomes appropriate. This message reached you today for a reason. Trust that. Carry it with you. And when you are ready, not before, not because anyone told you to, but when you are genuinely ready, take your next step. Deep down, you already know what that step is. Thank you for receiving this message today. Be gentle with yourself as you continue this particular season of quiet, protected building, one honest, patient step at a time.